Well, we had a family dog named Cookie. My son bought her when he was a young boy with his Christmas money and stuff, and we were pretty close. I mean, she went every place with us and really hadn't noticed much wrong with her other than she vomited every once in a while. So we took her down to the clinic and did a full blood panel, and it came back that she had some really elevated liver enzymes. And the pathologist told us we should send her liver in and have it analyzed for copper, which we did. Normally, dog's liver ought to be 100, maybe 150 parts per million of copper. Hers was 2,250. And so we realized that she had copper storage disease. She had more bad days than good days. So we humanely euthanized her. And then, time goes by, and then the grief sort of turns to anger about why did this all happen like this. So that's when we started early. So that's when I started the discovery phase, trying to figure out why dogs get copper storage disease. So back in 1988, down at University of Kentucky, some guys were working on trying to figure out a way to make pigs gain weight faster. So they figured out that if they took the copper oxide or cupric oxide out of pig food and replace it with copper sulfate, which is a chelated copper, that those pigs would grow faster. This improved growth rate allowed industrial swine farmers to move pigs to market faster and increase profitability. Within years, copper supplementation was being added to cattle, sheep, and even farm-raised fish. In 1997, feed regulations set forth by AAFCO changed, and they took the standard for industrial feedlot nutrition and applied it to companion pet foods with the decision to add chelated copper or copper sulfate to the diets. Chelated is when, in fact, here's how they make copper sulfate. They take cupric oxide and treat it with warm sulfuric acid. Now, something tells you that probably shouldn't be something you'd want in your food. These pigs are all going to be taken to slaughter at 6 or 7 months of age, but if you're going to use it for companion animal and they're going to live 10, 12, 13, 14, 16 years, you may have some problems, and it may come as early as 4 or 5 years of age. Why we're adding something to a diet where there's actually no deficiency ever noted, I have no idea. One of the things we do at our veterinary clinic is we do a lot of drug research trials, and we do a lot of dog food trials. So this is the things we do for the FDA and the dog food companies, those sorts of things. And that all involves collecting raw data. And so after our dog died, I thought, well, this is the way we figure out everything else in regards to our profession. And this should be the way I figure this out if I can, is to go ahead and collect as much raw data as you can. We send every kind of food you can send in to see how much copper is in it. Dry foods, canned foods, cheap foods, expensive foods. And it was a big variation, all the way from about 7 all the way up to 40.9, I believe. So there's a nice study that was done at the local university in East Lansing, and that showed that there was a distinct increase in these copper levels in dogs that had had their livers biopsied starting about 97, and the results were very stark.
In our study, it wasn't just subclinical changes. The percentage of dogs with copper concentrations exceeding 1,000 parts per million in their liver, which is a really toxic amount, also increased during this time period, and that change really centered around the mid-1990s when these dietary changes went into effect. Work that we've done here at our institution, as well as some reports that have emerged from Cornell, have suggested that a large proportion of this uptick in copper-associated hepatitis really occurred simultaneously with these changes in the requirements concerning copper supplementation in dog food. And we can look at our own database, and roughly a quarter of Labradors undergoing liver biopsy prior to this time period had abnormal copper concentrations. We're now somewhere in the realm of 50 to 70% of Labradors undergoing liver biopsies have high copper concentrations. And what was also interesting is that this didn't only affect the Labradors, the Dobermans, the West Highland White Terriers, the Dalmatians, these classic breeds that we think of as having copper-associated hepatitis, but we also found that copper concentrations had increased in breeds that aren't classically considered predisposed to this disease.
Now, once you have all the raw data, then you made your decision what happened, why it happened, didn't need to happen. And then your only option there is either get the world to change or you got to change it yourself. Here's where we're going. We're going to go ahead and give people a choice. We're going to make a food that does not have copper sulfate or copper proteinate. So we're not going to have chelated coppers as part of our diet. So we'll do the natural copper. And we're going to do it because, you know what, we still have 2 dogs and we're not going to feed our dogs copper sulfate. And I think maybe my dog's legacy, Cookie, our dog's legacy is going to be really that she ended up losing her life over this, but I think she's going to make a difference because we got angry enough that we we looked around and we figured out there's probably a better way to do things here. And we're going to try to do that thing. And we're going to try to give people that opportunity to feed their dog something that does not have chelated copper in it. We're extremely happy with the team we've assembled. Our diets were created by a practicing veterinarian, a food scientist, and a PhD nutritionist. Each ingredient was tested for purity and nutritional value. We ran digestibility and palatability studies to ensure that your dog likes our food. The problem with copper storage disease in dogs is it's hard to diagnose and it's hard to treat, but it's easy to prevent by limiting the amount of copper in your dog food.